Right, we're gonna call the Park Township Board of Trustees work session to order for August 29. And so the first thing we do is we'll look for a motion for the approval of the agenda. Any additions or deletions?
Support.
Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I have one thing. I gotta find it back. Article 5. Says motion was made by and supported by, and there's no names in there.
Good catch.
Support. I'll support that.
Questions? Favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. State your name, that'd be great. Anyone on the right side? Come on up.
Hello, Howard, Board of Trustees of Park Township, and Brian and Danielle of Parks and Rec, formerly Danielle. Thank you for all you have given the pickleball community and for what you are planning for our future. The latest amenities are so timely and beautiful. The flowers were unexpected, just gorgeous. How do they stay watered is what we were wondering. And is there a water supply going to be coming out there? I wondered if there is a status on it.
Just so you know, I don't mean to be.
Oh, we can't ask questions.
Sure, yeah, you can ask questions later.
Okay.
But we just
Okay,
try to keep it as to comment.
okay,
I'm happy to answer your questions after the meeting, or I'll go outside and then I'll answer. your
okay.
questions.
So those, I'll just say them. You don't have to answer them. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay, because I wrote them and otherwise it'll mess me up. Speaking of, so then we were just wondering about the water fountains and the status about that. And I did have the wish list. We were wondering about possibility, oh, I see, a shed, mostly to put the squeegees in. When the bad weather comes, hopefully an AED out at the courts. And I don't know if you've ever heard of things called Vaptor. They're Zambonis for courts. So when we eventually, I think, maybe might have APP tournaments and there's lots of weather, they can zap up that water really, really quick. I have information on that if you're ever interested in that. Also wondering if there might be some bike racks out at the courts and possibly more benches. Blowers to blow off courts due to sand and grass because people are slipping. For Windstrom, we were wondering, the courts are cracking badly and affecting play and increased chance of injury. Is there a repair plan in place for that? We wondered. For all courts in the Holland Zealand area, I know you don't do Zealand, but in addition, additional new signage and laminated with paper inside laminate to attached to the fences, the rotary flyers that they had flew all over the place. They were very nice. I just couldn't get them to stay put. So maybe some clips or something for that sort of thing. Also, maybe if we had laminated papers that directed players to, is that me? Holland Zealand Pickleball Club Facebook site for featured in their mimeographed schedule of play for all the courts in the entire area. Am I done? Oh, visions for our future. Turning out the best pickleball players in the Grand Haven, Holland, Zealand, Hudsonville, Grand Rapids area in preparation for the Olympics. which might be happening in possibly 15 years. And that it would be our dream and put Holland on the map for excellence in that area. Possibly travel teams to prepare those people too as well. That would be really fun to play Grand Haven and kick their butts, and Hudsonville and all of them. Thank you for allowing me this opportunity to speak. I can make a copy and submit this to you. My name is Bonnie Tardif, and my number is on the bottom of the page. Thank you.
Anyone else on this side? Right, anyone on the left side? All right, we'll close public comment. We will get to our presentation. So sure everyone got to see the presentation. Thank you to the committee, everyone that worked hard. It's you guys put a lot of work into this and it shows. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. So I'm going to turn it over to Brian and the team and take it away.
Appreciate it. Sorry, I'm from here, face the board. And then I, as well as the rest of the team, commented on the slides just based on this question about the presentation. Hello. That's okay, but okay, yeah, but if you turn it.
There it goes.
Working. I don't know, is it working? Yeah. Okay.
I guess I'd like to start off with there's a lot of information in this packet. A lot of different directions, a lot of different pieces of study that was done both internally and externally, as well as how the plan came together. Because there is so much information, instead of it just being a one-sided presentation, would it be all right that at the end of each slide, if you have a question concerning that slide, ask it of us. We'll do everything we can to answer it back. And then we can certainly take questions at the end of the presentation as well. But we just don't want to get so far down the presentation and then miss something that would have been key as far as understanding and that. So what we're presenting tonight is basically the work that has been done around the community center, the envisioning of that and the visioning of that, and then trying our best to articulate that back to you and gain some understanding around it. So again, please, if you have any questions, don't hesitate. I think it's imperative to acknowledge the team of people that put this together. Lynn has been more than a co-chair. He really has been a project lead. His work has been tireless in getting us all together in the work that we did, as well as drawing connections between lines and working with REA and the rest of the team and pulling this together could not have happened without Lynn and what he did. And then everyone did their part in respect to their area of expertise. We have Jamie here tonight, which did a significant amount of work around the design, and she's going to speak later to that effect. Jerry DeShaw was very instrumental in just helping the team come together around the program itself and offering insight in a number of different areas, as well as exploring other sites and being a part of the public comment. Lydia, who is not with us tonight, again, added a tremendous amount of just knowledge in the things that she did and her area of expertise. Prescott, same way. Randy, who is also not here, brought insight into the operational side of things. Tim Shields around the space and what that meant. And Dave Ash, who is also going to speak tonight. Thank you for doing that. Just around construction cost, what that potentially could look like and what would be an avenue for going forward. The consultants were phenomenal. I know at one point we asked for some additional money. I think that money was very well spent, and I think we were still pretty frugal in the response, and what we got from them worked out very, very well. With that in mind, I'd like to go forward with the presentation. The Park Township vision, which has been established now for a few years, and Lynn was a part in helping us establish that vision, was really the base of the foundation by which we tried to strive forward in defining what the community center was going to be and how that was going to function. I think that the community center vision builds in a number of ways on that township vision. And it was further shaped by community input that we got, as well as outside resources that we investigated. The three primary areas were that we wanted to foster community connection and connectivity. We really wanted to reflect and celebrate what Park Township is in our community, as well as we wanted to be responsible to the community. We wanted to be responsible to our neighbors and be good stewards, if you will, of the resource that we have available. Not only this corner, but the financial impact that this would make on the township itself. We go to the next slide, and this is one that I'm sure you've not seen before, or if you did see it, it was just in this presentation. This slide is really a representation of the input that we got from the community, as well as the desire to quote unquote use the community center as a connection point. I think when we think of our existing community center, while that building served its purpose for many decades, it was relatively a passive part of the community. It was there, it could be used, but it required the community to kind of reach into that. One of the things that we learned from the community, and we'll go into detail around, is that the community is asking for something that is not passive. They want something that's more active and that's more interactive with them as a community, with them as individuals, with them as a township. And I think that's what you're going to see as a fundamental difference in what's being proposed in the way of the community center today as compared to what we've had in the past. And I think this layout represents a lot of that, how it's connected to the open spaces, how it's connected to the parking lots, and yet how the parking lots don't divide it from the activity of the park. It's one of the key things that was brought up. So as a connection point, we're hoping that you see loud and clear how that connection is occurring in the placement as well as the facilities around the community center. Questions, comments? The other thing that we spent a lot of time doing was getting community feedback and then really kind of pulling that information into something that made some sense and that correlated around. If we look to the left side, you see the 4 circles and you see all the 4 circles interacting. There were 4 basic age groups that we were gaining information from. The under 18 crowd, the 18 to 54, the seniors 55 plus, as well as our business community in the Park Township area. And what we were really looking for was what were the things that all of those groups hit on. So there were a number of things that maybe any one group thought was important, but wasn't supported by the other groups. And we saw that in every one of the groups, or we saw areas where maybe 2 groups thought something was important. And yet there were very specific areas where all the groups thought that those were important. And instead of trying to be everything to everyone from the sense of we're going to do everything that you asked for, we really worked hard to distill that down to, okay, what are the things that the entire group and the entire range of people are asking for? And I think that goes back to the stewardship, trying to make good use of the dollars that are available or that could be available, and what's going to make the biggest impact from a township perspective. Diverse group. And I think we learned a lot in every one of those sessions. Even the little things that I'm sure would not have thought of on our own. Someone would bring it up and it's like, I never thought about that. And we heard those kinds of things over and over again. So the community input was really good. A lot of work went into making that happen. As you can see, the meetings on the right-hand side, and we have one more meeting coming up on September 16th. But overall, very pleased with the amount of input that we gained from those community interactions. And I'd like to turn it over to Lynn, and he's going to talk to us more about just kind of the brainstorming and the ideation of the overall process.
Your notes here. So
Please go right ahead.
So yeah, the brainstorm and the ideation was really, really important. It's not what we wanted, it's really what the community wanted. And I engaged with Howard early on. He said, do not underestimate the power of not one session, but 3 or 4 sessions, because not everybody's going to attend, and we really wanted to engage the community. So I think we went pretty deep in that area, and I'm really glad that we did. Actually, this team started working last September. We're 11 months into this process. So we've been working at it for quite a while. We actually started off looking at benchmarking. So we went out, the team, we divided up, I took 2, several other people took 2. We had a whole questionnaire that we had. It was very, very detailed. So we went out and looked at 12 facilities, of which Evergreen Commons. Walter is here to talk about that after we finish this, that I want him to talk about what this has meant to the community of people that they have. But anyway, so they were one of the people that we benchmarked. As we started learning more information from these interactive sessions that Brian just talked about, we said, okay, let's go back out and let's dig a little bit deeper. And so we went back out and looked at 6 more facilities. And you can see the names of the facilities, but we also Jerry went to St. Paul, Minnesota and looked at some facilities there. Prescott looked at some things in Indianapolis. So we went outside of West Michigan just to see what others were doing. So a lot of research, and this really just signifies the amount of response that we had from the different parts of the organization. So you can see some of the businesses that showed up. We had 200 plus people under 18. Probably one of the most powerful things we did at Harye's recommendation. Let's go out to the schools. We went to West Ottawa schools. We went to Black River schools. We went to Rose Park. We actually had workshops that we did with them in studios like this, and they were so engaged, and it was amazing. Their ideas were absolutely incredible, and I remember one story in particular. Somebody in high school said, you know, I want a place where I can come when I get out of school. It's really crazy when I get home. It's noisy, it's distracting. I want a place where I can go study for a couple of hours, it can be quiet, and then I can then meet with a few friends, and then I go home for dinner. But how important a place like this was, she called it purposeful. She wanted to say, my purpose is I want to come in and do this. I have a place where I can go. And I thought that was really pretty amazing. So these are, again, the organizations that we talked to. I think one of the other ones that was really important was having Evergreen Commons. You can see we had Benjamin's Hope, we had people from the business community, we had Fellowship Church, we had Ken Coffee, and them talking about what a building like this would do for our community. And it was incredibly insightful. So a lot of reach out. These are some fun photographs. This is actually the first event that was in this room. It was jam-packed. You can see there were boards where these students actually took this as an exercise, as a project. And we had boards all the way around the table, and they were standing at the boards. And as people from the community came in, they were explaining what they thought was important, why it was important. It was amazing. It was probably the best thing that we did. But the main message is we had a lot of involvement. So to the point that Brian made a little bit earlier, what we did here, we took the 4 categories. You can see under 18, 18 to 54, 55 plus the businesses and organizations. So throughout all these workshops, what are the main things we heard from them? The things that you see in red are the common things that we heard across all groups. We want this to be not just a senior center. We don't want it just to be a youth center. We want it to be something that all people can enjoy. So the things in red are what we focused on that we had in common. So there was a lot of work getting to this point here. So from this, we developed this slide here, and the far left-hand side is, these are the top 10 things that we heard from the community that was really important that we need to go out and look at. So you can see athletic courts was one of the categories. Group fitness rooms, multi-purpose rooms, a kids play zone. I thought this was pretty cool because they said, we have a long winter here, and what do we do? Everybody's kind of cooped up. So they said an indoor play area would be really, really important. We heard about quiet space. We have a lot of people, you look at the demographics, a lot of people that work from home, and it's a place where people could actually bring their laptop in, they could have coffee, they could interact with other people in the community. Then just a lively cafe and lounge, reception area and welcome desk, outdoor gathering area. So they talked not only what was in the building, but what was around the building. And that's why Brian talked about that in the master plan. They talked a lot about the spaces that they needed to connect with. And then we talked about large event spaces. And then there are some other support areas. There were some secondary things that we looked at. We kind of put those in the middle column. And those are things that we'll consider as we focus on the things on the left. But the thing that I thought was really important is what are the things we're not going to do? Because some of the things people said is, oh, we want a swimming pool, we want to have a workout gym, we want to have a farmer's market. And so some of these ideas came up. And we were really focused on, we don't want to duplicate what is already out in the community. Somebody could drive 10 minutes and they could be there. We want this to be something that's unique. And so we're not trying to put everything in there. So again, what we decided not to do is a farmer's market. We have one right across the street. We have an ice skating park going in downtown Holland soon. We have a roller skating park. We have a West Ottawa swimming pool. That thing is expanding in the next couple of years. And then we already have tennis courts. So we're not going to duplicate those things. So we kind of put those off to the side. So, and we think that the part of being financially responsible too is not trying to be all things to all people. What was really important in the exercise too was, well, what's the look and feel? What do you think this would look like? And you can see some of the big words that are there. And I think, Brian said that this really, they wanted an active site. So you think of it's welcoming, inviting, energetic, fun, vibrant. These are the words that came up. And then some of the words down below would be some of the spatial features. A lot of, they want it modern, spacious, bright, colorful, obviously ADA accessible. So these are the things that were important to them.
Don't forget the beanbag.
The what?
So the beanbag.
Right? Yes, thanks, Howard. Absolutely. So that was kind of the first part of collecting the information. Then in the second workshop, we actually had this over at the West Ottawa in the cafeteria. And this was all about the look and the feel. So now that we knew that these were the 10 types of spaces, what do we think they would look like? And so we took one of the spaces and we gave like 4 images, like here's what a reception welcoming area could look like. And we made sure that they looked very different from one another. And so they had dots and they got to go up and vote, and they were standing at the backboards, putting the dots on the pictures that were most important to them. And I'll show you what we came up with. You can see the bottom picture where they're standing at the board, putting the dots on. They had a lot of fun doing that. So these are the 10. So there were 4 images per space type. These are the winning images. These are the images that they put the most dots on. So we start to get an idea of what the look and feel is. So if you look at all of those photographs, and you can see some of the words that kind of describe it. But when you look at those spaces, Jamie and I took a look at this at the end, and we said, what's in common? What is consistent across all of those images? And I think Jamie and I said, well, it is modern. That was one of the words that they talked about. But look at the amount of glass that they have in there where you can visibly connect to the outside and light comes in. Look at the wood. They like the nature, the natural feel. And I mean, we're in a wooded area of Michigan, so you can start to see the things that are important. Now, there are things in the photographs that are like totally not affordable, but these were the things that they liked and that they thought about. So again, this is not us imposing what we think it should look like. This is what they thought that they would like to see. And that's the important message here. So with that, I'll pause before I hand it to anybody. Are there questions on that last segment?
That you would want to bring back in identify? Or was there something in the community that was not really out of the way, or didn't expect that much energy off agency? And just actually 2 questions.
Two questions. So I think the thing that was most helpful is when we learned those 10 things that they wanted, that's when we went back out. And so we went over and talked to Walter at Evergreen Commons. And we talked about those spaces, how are people using those spaces? Are those important in your facility? And so in my mind, Steve, we validated the things that the people said that were important. And then we went and looked at these facilities and they said they were important. 2 that I personally visited, Byron Center, their community center, it's almost exactly these 10 things that we put in ours. And we talked about the operation of it. What would they do differently? So I feel that it really validated the direction that we were going. The one idea that we didn't get in from one of the kids is he really wanted to walk in and he wanted to see this big tube with fish aquarium and things kind of overflowing. And it's just like, oh, I don't know how to get that in there. Anyways, but there were some really good ideas. But the key message with that is, and we talked to the student and we talked to the teacher, they want something when you walk in, it's not just the same space that you see everywhere else. They're looking for something that is unique, something that will draw people in. It doesn't have to be the fish aquarium, but I think we have to really look at what we put in there in that main space when you come in that is very unique and people want to be there. So anyway, so I think some of those unique ideas we still can explore. I don't think the fish aquarium is going to make it.
I think the other thing that was interesting too, as much as there was work put into what do people want to see, we learned a lot from talking to other centers as far as if you could do something different, if you could change something, what would you do differently? And I think it was amazing the amount of places that we went to where they had competing rooms, but yet one room had a whole bunch of windows and the other one had a couple of windows. And they're like, this one never gets used. This one, I don't have enough, I can't, it's constantly booked. Right. So there were things like that, that just as much as we learned from people asking what it is that they wanted, the operating centers were coming back saying, if I could do it over, I would do this or I wouldn't do this. And I think that was just as powerful even, and really helped us frame up. It's like, okay, if we're going to do this kinds of things, right, what's important and what's not, and what kind of things do we have to make sure we shy away from?
Yeah, I think probably the big thing, all of them said, we need more multi-purpose spaces. We need more of those spaces. They are so, there's such a demand for these types of rooms and these spaces. They need to be able to open up so you can have a dividing wall. And this room here could now be twice the size. It could be 3 times the size. And so literally the programming that you do really drives how effective, the spaces are used. So everybody said we need more multi-purpose rooms. The programs are such a key part of drawing people into the facility. I think the other thing, this mainly came from Byron Center. They said, think about the future, think 20 years down the road, what might this facility need to be? So you'll see on a plan that Jamie's going to show in just a little bit, we started to say, well, there's a phase 1 and there's a phase 2. There's nothing worse than building a building. And then in 10 years, you go, oh, darn, we need to expand it. Oh my gosh, we're going to have to blow this wall out and we're going to have to demo all of this stuff. So we really started thinking, this is a 50-year plan. And so we started with kind of what a phase 1 would look like, and we can grow into it with a phase 2. So we really stayed very focused on what flexibility for the future.
Yeah.
Any other questions? I would like to introduce you to Jamie. Come on up, Jamie. And give me just a,
Go to the podium.
sure, if you want to.
I think they introduced me a little bit earlier, but I'll do a quick introduction just so you know a little bit about myself and my capabilities that I bring to the committee. I'm an interior designer by trade, but have worked for 25 years at an architecture firm in Southeast Michigan, and then now here in the Grand Rapids area. So my job really there is a design director. I'm heading up architecture and interior design and working with companies, municipalities, higher education facilities to really be that person that kind of starts out with the visioning for projects with clients, to kind of sit with them and really understand what it is that we're trying to solve for, or what the project is going to be. And so this has been amazing because we've had 11 months where typically on projects, they'll bring us on board and we have, 1 or 2 months to do this and not, really have the ability to reach out to the community. So I think Len's done a great job of really kind of corralling everybody in the community and getting a lot of feedback from everyone. And then my job really is to kind of take this information and then distill it down into adjacencies and square footages of real programmed space. And I'll answer, Steve, your question as well from my own opinion. But one of the things that we really learned a lot and we talked about was, looking out into the future and the flexibility of this building, because we don't know what the next generation or or even us as we get older, the needs that we're going to need within this community. So the building needs to be very flexible. And we talked a lot about that throughout the process with everyone, right? And then also one of the things that I really noticed a lot was just the need for excessive storage space, even more so than you would have within, you know, a company's headquarters or a higher education facility, because they have places to squirrel, you know, their program stuff, yeah, in different spaces, where this is a community, so people are going to be coming in. So if you're teaching an art class per se, you're going to have people lugging things in and out, or you're going to have to store that for a program or a class that could take 6 to 8 weeks. So really taking that information and saying, yes, we want multi-purpose rooms, but we need to have program space to support the use of those multi-purpose rooms. Otherwise, you're going to have stuff sitting around cluttered. You're going to have people bringing things in and out of the space that are really going to damage it and cause it to be have more repair and whatnot. So really focusing on, you know, that, you know, in terms of programmed square footage. And we learned that from multiple spaces that you need to look at extra square footage and whatnot for storage. So what I did, and I worked with the team, was we really looked at like the needs of the spaces, how often classrooms or multi-purpose rooms would be used, how many different activities you could fit into a gymnasium space. If you had a cafe common area, how many people could sit there at each time? How many people would you want to serve? So we learned a lot of that information. And then I developed a written program. So when you start any kind of building process, you start with this visioning and all these ideas, and then you develop a program document or statement that you would give to an architecture firm or a planning team to kind of guide them as to really what you're wanting to provide. So along with this package that we've created here, you would also give them a list of items per space or square footages of allocated space that would be needed. So to back up the square footages that you see on here, the 41,470 square feet. We have a multiple 11-page document here that lists every individual kind of space that we think would be required. So for instance, I'll just do a simple one, which is a lobby reception area. We need a reception counter to support 1 to 2 people checking in. We need support spaces for copy print supplies, a waiting area, a vestibule, a spot for coats, wheelchair storage, and then we learned that you need shovels at the entry and whatnot. So put in square footages for all of those. We've also indicated, you know, what technology might be required for these spaces and what type of furniture would be required for these spaces. And so each one of these categories that you see up here in the or on your document there, there's a lot of backup that gets us to that square footage is what I'm trying to say. So you can just say, I need a reception desk, it's 200 feet. Well, no, that really doesn't work for that place. So we have a programmed space that we developed, and then we also know that on top of individual program space, you also need support spaces. So you'll see when Dave talks here in a minute about the budget, it's broken out into program spaces versus core spaces. So core spaces would be restroom facilities, janitor closets, extra storage rooms. You need a loading dock, you know, to bring things in and out of the facility. What else do I have? IT closets. You need a water pump room. You need a mechanical room, electrical closets. So I've actually put in here for a building of this size, how many of those spaces we would probably need and what that square footage would be. And I've just used that from my 25 years of experience of doing building design of how many of those spaces you would need. And then also some extra spaces that are going to be required by code. Like a wellness room, for example, we're going to need one of those. So those are all indicated in the same document here that came up with this 41,000 square feet. Then we took it a little farther, and something we didn't necessarily need to do, but one thing we wanted to do was to start to look at some proposed adjacencies, because we felt like as a committee, we really did gather a lot of great information about how the building might want to lay out and how it might block out in terms of adjacencies, because for instance, we just really kind of understand from our tours of other buildings and facilities how one space is going to flow into the next. So what you see in the proposed space adjacencies diagram is really just kind of a block plan, taking these square footages and just kind of blocking them out as to how we think that this could lay out into a facility of this size at 41,000 square feet. And so, for instance, we are kind of showing where our main entry might be. We know that we want the offices adjacent to the lobby space because we're planning to, maybe share some of the duties of the office space to the lobby reception area. We wanted to be that central location where that person could also be able to look throughout the facility. So you can kind of see where the reception desk is there. You can see the main entry. You can see down the corridor. We wanted it adjacent to the cafe. So this diagram wasn't to necessarily design the building, but to kind of help the team that is selected to design the facility to kind of understand some of those adjacencies and spaces that we felt as a committee would be great to be close to one another, as well as like multi-purpose rooms that we thought could maybe open up into one another, or a fitness class that we understood and we learned from Georgetown Township, right? I think you kind of got kicked out for looking into a fitness class. But just knowing some of those rooms might want to be tucked away for privacy purposes. And then also, I think we learned too, the kids' play zone, don't have that near an entry, kind of have it tucked back away in the building. Just for security reasons with the kids, but then also so that the noise isn't kind of driving everybody else crazy. And then we wanted that to flow into the gymnasium. So really that's what this diagram is here. This is not us dictating what this building will look like. Once you get a design team and architecture team on board and working with the civil engineer and the landscape architect, they'll take this information, and I'm guarantee you this is more information than they probably have ever gotten in any project, but just to kind of help that out. We did also then add a 25% circulation factor on top of all the square footages that we pulled together. And that is industry standard to kind of cover square footages for perimeter, thicknesses of walls, perimeter of building, corridors to get to the bathrooms or to get to ancillary spaces, things that wouldn't be included in the square footage. So we have that indicated on this document as well. And that's what brought us to this 41,000 square feet. So I feel like it's a good, fair number.
I think the big thing is how big is this building?
Yeah.
So this is kind of how big it is.
Mhm.
And that's kind of a phase one. And then we kind of started to see what a phase two might look like. The other reason that we wanted to start, the actual building is not going to look like this, but we
Mhm.
wanted to say, how is this going to
Yeah.
fit on the site with our pickleball courts? And where do we start looking at entrances and parking lots? Because there's a lot of stuff we're going to do. So more than anything, we wanted to start shaping that corner based upon what we think, how big this building might be, to make sure we're putting stuff in the right place over the next few years. So that was the other part of this exercise of what we wanted to know.
Mhm. And then we also did, like I mentioned, capture the audio visual program. So, how many monitors we think we would need in each space, if we would like a sound masking system or any type of audio visual preferences for each of the individual spaces based on our tours, as well as what we heard from people. So that was also documented in this program. And then we did take that out to a couple manufacturers. I think Tim Shields was on the committee. So we asked Kentwood office to give us an idea of what the furniture would cost. And then CS Erickson is an audio visual company that installs, that I work with quite a bit in the Grand Rapids area, and I know they're local here. So I gave them this program packet that said, what I thought we would need in terms of technology. And then they also put together a package with some pricing for us. And with both of those, we did kind of add on percentages for saying a couple years out from now, so that we know that these dollars aren't going to be today, because we still have to build the building. So what does that dollar point look like to buy this type of package in the future? So we did some due diligence in terms of that to try to really rein that number in, because a lot of times I know clients all the time forget about technology and audio visual, and that can be on a project of this size, over $1 million. And so we wanted to really make sure that we captured all of that information in this round with this committee, so.
And I think that the big idea, we don't want to have a year down the road, a lot of surprises, right?
Mhm.
So really to minimize the surprises, just like, oh my gosh, this building needs to be 10,000 square feet more than what we thought. We underestimated storage. We really did a lot of due diligence to really size the building the right way. And then in just a moment, we'll actually talk about how we priced it out, and we took the very same approach. We don't want to go down this path of like, oh my gosh, this thing is $5 million more than what we thought. So we really dug into, and we feel good about the size. We feel good about our numbers around this.
Mhm.
Any questions for Jamie?
Yeah, help me out understanding, maybe the size of the footprint that a building of 42,000 square feet would look like. It looks like you're thinking 2 levels, at least on the diagram. Is that right?
Yes,
So the footprint of that building would be what?
well, the gymnasium there is like 95 feet by 180, so we're like 365, 380 feet long, so left to right.
Roughly
By
speaking,
180, 200, yeah.
but I'd roughly guess the phase one would be probably 30,000 square feet of footprint.
Oh, sorry, footprint, yes,
And so
Yes.
probably 30,000 feet of footprint
yes,
with another 10,000 feet being on second level.
yeah.
Does that make sense?
Probably if you look at.
Right.
Yeah. So I mean, roughly speaking.
Mhm.
Say it again if you would.
Oh, sorry, roughly speaking, about 30,000 square feet of footprint
Okay.
with the second
Yeah.
level accounting for another 10,000
Yeah.
square feet of,
Yeah.
Mhm.
of usable space.
And so 30,000 square foot would give what dimensions?
It's a little bit.
So basically, I mean, 300 by 100 or, yeah, 300 feet by 100 feet.
300, yeah, that'd be right.
So about the size of a football field.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a pretty good sized building.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
and the reason that we are showing here, it's 2-story is really because there's a couple reasons is. One is the look and feel that we received from the community was really looking for a volume of space in some key areas. For instance, kind of that lobby cafe reception area is, getting that to be more open. We also are looking at, implementing a walking track or walking facility. And so if we did that upstairs, then we could have some space adjacent to that to support it. We are also looking at, how it fit on the site, but then also if you were stacking multi-purpose rooms, and then classrooms up above it, you're building less of an exterior perimeter, which is a lot of money. And you're already, going up in scale to get that, lobby space a little bit taller. And then you have less roof line. So there are some economies to scale if you already are wanting to be a little taller, is to going 2-story with some of those spaces like a multi-purpose room or classrooms that you don't necessarily want or need a volume of space. So, and then you can stack bathrooms, which starts to get a little bit more economical. And then also too, you can close off that second floor and have that be a little bit more private for some nice events, or, if the gyms are open later at night, you can close that area off too. So there is some thought put behind that.
Questions?
Yeah, there's a question about the outside, inside, relationship.
Mhm.
I mean, the site plan that was, in slide number 2 or 3.
Do you want to go back?
And then the integration of this building on this site. We have a delightful site. We have a lot of things going on. How did you do, how did you contemplate bringing the outside in and vice versa, integrating this gorgeous site into the design of the building?
Yeah.
I say design, we're not designing it,
Mhm.
but the activities.
Adjacencies.
So.
Right.
So if you look at the floor plan, on the far bottom right-hand side, that's kind of where the main entry is. And so there is clear visibility from, as you're driving down, the road, literally there will be the higher volume that Jamie talks about. And it's light that goes all the way through, and you can see all the way to the back of the building. So there's glass at the front, there's glass at the back. There's a lot of visibility to connect to all parts of the site. The other thing that's on there is we have 3 multi-purpose rooms that are on the other side of the gymnasium. And we're actually looking at some of those spaces that, well, they all look out. So those really important spaces all look out over the pickleball and all the activities and the things that are going on. So we really kind of look at how do we get a lot of visual connection from the inside to the outside with a lot of glass looking all the way through. So that was kind of the concept of how we put it together.
Well, and we were also the gymnasium, you know, you typically don't want a huge amount of glass on the gymnasium itself. So right now it's kind of facing towards the east, which is towards that busier intersection. And so maybe we do clerestory windows up above there and have that be more solid and maybe could be some type of feature. But we also were trying to spill people out into the community park as opposed to out onto the busy roads. So
What Jamie
Yeah.
just described, look at, I flipped back, look at athletic courts and you can see there's a gymnasium in glass. And so it's not
And
just
a
a
partial
brick wall. It
Mhm.
looks like a typical gymnasium because otherwise it'll be really ugly from the outside and from the inside. So there needs to be some glass and visibility. And so, and that's the image that people liked. So there is a lot of glass and it's not going to look like a gymnasium from the outside when you start approaching it.
Yeah.
Again, the architecture firm, we hope that they come up with something really amazing for us to look at. So this is not intended to be the floor plan. It's just the spaces and what needs to be next to what.
What I sense is that there's a lot more work to be done as far as including the outside activities
Oh,
with
yeah.
the building. Because, you know, if you're a mother with children and you have the playground close by, that's attractive. But then you also bring quite a bit of activity close into the
Yeah.
building as well. I mean, I think there's some interesting dynamics of how you have laid out this facility and the outside
Mhm.
activities in a very nice way. So well done on that. I'm sure
Uh-huh.
you've seen good and bad
Yeah.
or lacking design at the places you visited.
Yes.
And you know, we have plenty of space and we could park the playground out way out, but you pulled it appears to be way in.
Yes, Steve, no,
And
that's.
it looks deliberate. I assume it was deliberate.
Yeah.
It's very deliberate. If you look at the image on the outdoor gathering spaces, so we actually are multi-purpose spaces. Actually, this is an idea that actually Byron Center said, I wish that we would have put these sliding doors that open up.
Georgetown did in one of theirs, I believe,
Where
too.
you
Yeah.
can actually extend the space to the outside. And somebody said like, it'd be great if I was in my yoga class in one of these rooms and then the outdoor play area is right there and I can see my kids and I can, so, you know, so a lot of visibility so that you can be in one space, but you can be, you can watch kids in another space. So that's kind of why we did the adjacency thing.
Mhm.
So we know the layout will be different, but we really took that to heart.
Mhm.
I think it's good too, that the things you're asking about, we were able to articulate those in words, but it's hard to convey words what that means, right? And so the drafts that are in front of you are to some degree, some articulation of what it is that we heard from the community and how that potentially could look. But it's all draft at this point, right? It's just, but I do think it was necessary because the work that was done by all kinds of people on putting together cost, right? What is this thing going to cost? And is that, you know, is that a reasonable number or is it not a reasonable number?
Mhm.
So one quick story, the power of the coffee house. So Prescott
yeah.
and I, very early on, were over at Ken. We were starting the research phase. And so we were talking about this back and forth. And so this person sitting next to us, Jamie.
Yeah.
She was just kind of, we were talking, she said, that was really an interesting conversation you just had with that person. Sounds like you're maybe thinking about a community center or something. And so she said, this is what I do. And so.
And I live in the
she became
community.
a part of the
so-
team.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have,
Yeah, but I've only lived here a couple years, so I didn't know all of this about the community park and everything. But yeah, it was really great to get to know and be a
Great.
part of this committee. It was really an honor. So
and so,
Yeah.
you know, a part of what Jamie's put together, and then we're gonna take it over to Dave, because we basically said, so what is it that an architect design firm, call it a design
Come on, Dave.
firm, what do they need to receive in a package from us? Where they have all the right information for them to kind of start to proceed into the next phase. So really, after we finished this piece, after Jamie finished this piece right here, we went and Dave, come on up and I'll introduce you. So Dave Ash is with Lakewood Construction. And so he's been a part of our team, so he can kind of describe the process of how they took the information that Jamie just talked about and started to convert that into how much does this building cost? So, oh wait.
One thing just
Oh,
real
sorry,
quick.
forgot.
We didn't just look at this community center as the whole approach, if you will, for the township. We have a Mottman Center on the south side of town. We very much want to connect these two centers. And we think it's really imperative that we do. And so you're going to see that in our operational cost sheets, as well as the capital cost sheets, being able to bring the Mottman Center up to the same level. And then to also be able to reach across that from a programming perspective and an operational perspective. And again, shift it from being more of a passive site to more of an active site. So, I mean, keep that in mind. We did spend some time thinking about that, and we think it's really imperative from an overall perspective of the township.
So, Dave, describe how we approach
Yeah,
your
yeah.
organization.
So this is a drum roll. Everybody hears all about this and they say, how much is it gonna cost? We get that, a lot of times with owners too, where these clearly are budgets right now. And I think everybody understands that because we're going off lines on paper. However, there was method and a lot of time put into these various low, mediums and highs. As Jamie mentioned, she had several pages of backup to how she came up to her square footage costs for her square footage totals for all these various rooms, as did we for these various program spaces and court spaces and circulation spaces. We used primarily historical data over buildings of like buildings that we've done in the past and focus more on those that we've done recently and not something that we've done 5 years ago, because there has been quite an escalation in construction costs, obviously, over the past 5 years. One in particular, I talked to Brandon, our senior estimator, put a lot of effort into this, and Jamie was worked with him and Len as well. But Unity Christian was one in particular that we just literally turned over the keys, and we still have some things going on there. But we've used a lot of that historical data from mechanical, electrical, plumbing, glazing, site work, everything that goes into that to help put these numbers together. And then we really are just kind of going, where's a low, medium, and high on here? And what does that mean? The following page, why don't we go to that just real quick? And I know everybody's seen this in a packet that has got distributed, but so, and there really isn't a vast variation from low, medium, and high. And I think for the most part, the photos and the inspiration photos that everybody was kind of gravitating towards kind of puts us on this high end a little bit with a lot of glass. And that is really the statement we want to make here. It has to look nice. It has to look professional. So, the low gets into, I'll give an example, a punch behind you, Jim. It's just a punch opening. It's a little simpler, much like that would go in interior walls in lieu of a curtain wall glass, if you will. Medium gets into, you're going to have an entry canopy. High is going to get into large canopies and overhangs with exterior soffits. So it's much like building a house. You can build a 5,000, 3,000 square foot house, and it might cost you this much, and it might cost you that. It all depends on what goes in it. We'll get to that slide in a bit here, but we talk a little bit about an approach and a design build approach, not to get ahead of ourselves there. But one thing to know, when an architect gets on board and a construction manager gets on board, we really look at that, and everybody agrees here. I mean, that's really a team. It's the owner, the architect, and the construction manager, and we are locked in together. We've got a budget we're aiming for, but as that design progresses and gets to a conceptual design, and what we have right now is probably not even quite conceptual. But it's close. And then you get to a schematic, and you get design development, and you get to construction documents. But a construction manager will be pricing this thing live as that thing gets designed. So you always know pretty much where you're at and whether you're over budget or under budget. We just delivered a project to Herrick Public Library, and they ended up adding a lot of things that they had on their wish list that they didn't think they could get, but they did. And we ended up still coming a tick below under budget. that was just the collaboration of the team working, regardless of who that is. But that's that process that takes place as you make these selections in a building. What can we afford? Do we want to go geothermal? Can we afford geothermal? A lot of that value engineering goes in along the way. So looking at some of the things in the high end, we got a little more higher end lighting. We've got mechanical system with a chiller and a boiler versus rooftop units. You know, those are simply just some examples. The lower has things such as a plastic laminate countertops at the cafe. So just to give you a little idea of what those three areas mean, and there's a lot to read on there, but we'll flip back to the other real quick a minute, Len. And as Jamie was mentioning, the square footage specifics by room was calculated to come up with that 40,000+ square foot. The program spaces, the core spaces, again, as a reminder, core spaces are things such as storage rooms and mechanical rooms and restrooms. As that concept got drafted in square footage is established, Brandon, our senior estimator, basically he put a different square foot number to those spaces than he did the circulation spaces. So there was effort put into square footage numbers based on these various spaces. A gymnasium obviously is going to have a little different square footage than a conference room is. So effort was put into that, quite a bit of detailed effort. And at this level here, to keep it high and to keep it relatively simple, it was broken down into those three categories, into a low, medium, and high. Those numbers would include a construction management fee and everything that goes into that. You would pay XYZ construction company, whoever that might be. So that would be all in those numbers. Soft cost, obviously, as Jamie mentioned, it's easy to forget about some of those things. Architectural and engineering, that's going to be the architectural firm. That's going to be your structural engineer. That's going to be your mechanical, electrical, plumbing, which all requires design, fire protection, civil engineering. That's what's in that number there. Full architectural engineering. Fixtures and furnishings. Again, that number came from Tim Shields, who was on our committee, been in office furniture forever. So there, again, he looked at each of those rooms, looking at about $1 million there. Audio visual, 900 to $1 million. Again, a calculated number that came from CS Erickson that does this. And they did low voltage as well, or where'd that come from? They came from low voltage. They did that as well. Indoor play structure, again, just really going, what are we not having there? What are we missing? So we really tried to check all the boxes here. In building signage, right? It's easy to forget about that, but spend $100,000 on that. So soft numbers in there, add them all up, and that's kind of where we're at in that, anywhere from that 18 to $20 million from low to high.
You put a 10% contingency
yeah,
based upon.
Good point on that. Yes, there is a 10% contingency as a design were to progress. If this moves forward, when this moves forward, hopefully, we're always, a CM's always going to carry, a CM meaning a builder, construction manager is going to carry a relatively higher contingency. As that design progresses, that contingency will back off a tick. Even when final construction and bidding takes off, you'll always carry a little bit of contingency that an owner always knows where that goes, if you will. So it's just always good to carry something there. So there is 10% in here for that as well. Yeah, things he did include are like fitness equipment, not knowing what's going to go in here, LEED certification. That's a whole nother topic. Solar, endowment funds covered. We talked a little bit about maybe a covered walkway connecting this office to the new. And I think parking lots perhaps we're going to come out of a general fund or something. So, but yeah, that's kind of where we're at with that. And I think based on square footage.
Is anybody breaking a sweat?
So
we will talk a little bit about how we fund it, but we wanted to come up with a number.
yeah.
So if I may make a quick comment, Yeah, so I just wanted to emphasize what the gentleman is saying and what Len said earlier about a construction manager approach. So construction manager approach, design build approach, which really more on the construction manager side, can sometimes not be, it cannot be perfectly aligned with government, but it is absolutely the best way to go. There is no question. The difference becomes you're not gonna get, you're not gonna get a, here's our building and we go into a room like we normally do with a bike path or an infrastructure project, and we open bids and we cut open those bids and we have a number, right? That's not what these gentlemen are presenting. But what I will tell you is even in a governmental world, and I've done construction manager approaches on a number of projects, it is absolutely the way to go, even though you're not going to get that bid opening. But that process of collaboration that goes back and forth, and not only do you have the construction manager, but you have an owner's representative, that process saves you money. And it gets you a better product in the outcome, and maybe doesn't save $1, but it gets you a better product for the money. And so it's important that when we think about what next steps are, that's an element that is absolutely key. So I thank you.
Mhm. And if you want to retire, come work for Lake, because that's pretty good.
That was a good.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
No, it is very true. That regardless of who I work for, design, build, the way to go. It's a collaboration, it's a team effort. And in contractor, how this process will work, it's typically a cost plus a fee. See the numbers, nothing's hidden. You get into, a plant spec scenario, an architect gets turned loose and you get a stack of drawings that thick and you get it out and they price it. And all of a sudden you're $6 million over budget. And then there's this going on along the way. So yeah, I second that as well, but thank you. Any other questions before I?
Just an observation, we I would say, assembled a group to look at this process. You had done 11 months of hard work, heavy lifting. And just a reminder to our board and the community, we gave them no budget, no budget target. So, there's a little bit of I'm glad I'm sitting down when I saw the number. But I think that's a reality, is that we went in it eyes wide open, that what's the community have in their heart to do? You didn't take this charge lightly, and you did the hard research. You engaged a lot of community members, a lot of different ages. I think that you've proven your case of what the community is very interested in. Now, we didn't start with a number, and I think that's deliberate. I mean, I think that was a very right thing for our board to do. So I don't think we should say, well, who in the world would ever do this at this price? We didn't charge them with a number. So I think we have to take responsibility. We said, community, what do you think we need? And I guess I'm just trying to level set, because you can look at this number and be a bit surprised. I go like, wow, could we, should we? And I think that's a part we just have to take ownership of. We said, okay, community, what do you think? And what are you dreaming about? And I think that's the hard work that you had done. So I think commendable job, fantastic. I'm not surprised by the number, but I think the community might go, wow, that's really expensive. On the other hand, you had everybody piping in. I mean, this was a great process. Well done. Thank you.
Yeah, when you look at the square footage, I'm gonna bring my phone in here. If you look at the total, it's about $500, right? Times 40,000. That includes all of stuff. I just got done building a house. Square foot on a house.
Can't build a house anymore for less.
You cannot. Can't be done. Can't be done. $500 a square foot. Yeah. You get economy of scale, you get volume, really helps you as you go up, cheaper to go up. Yes. So thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you, Dave.
Just an exclamation point of all of that is, this is what we heard from the community, but We then went back out. Those were the extra six facilities we went back to and says that, yeah, this is what it takes to have a successful community center. And those are the things that help that community center to thrive. And in just a little while, we're going to have Walter come up and talk about Evergreen Commons. And there's a really interesting piece that we think there's an opportunity to collaborate with them on what we're doing here to really make this a successful program. So he's going to talk just a little bit to you about that. Any other questions on these numbers?
Yeah.
Because, so then there are no questions there. So what we did is we got together with so when we went out and benchmarked these facilities, we went to Walter and said, hey, Walter, in Evergreen Commons, what are the key roles? What are the key functions that you have in your facility? How many of those do you have? What's the size of your facility? So we went probably about across 5 of them. And we came back with a thought on what we think it would take to actually operate this facility. Then we got together with Howard and Brian and Connie just to say, okay, so these are the roles that we think that we will need. So, and this goes beyond the community building. And the next slide is so we said we need to look beyond the community building because what we're building here, we have this whole community park, we have this community center, we have a greater need in Park Township. So let's don't go into it blindfolded on what we really need, longer term. So when we got together with them, it was basically, we need a Parks and Recreation director. We need programming staff. These are the programs that we're going to bring into the building that the people of all different ages will benefit from. That's the thing that we heard so loud and clear. The programs that you bring in are one of the most successful things because you can have this wonderful building and all these rooms, but then you don't have the people that are reaching out to the community to see what kind of programs are needed. That's what keeps it vibrant. That's what keeps it active. That's what keeps people flowing in and out of this building. So the programming staff is really important. Of course, we have a nice reception and admin area, so we'll need that as well. We showed some additional support. Then we talked a little bit about a public works director and then maintenance staff. Now these are kind of the roles. And then I wanted to just show you, so how does that play out into an annual cost? So what we did on here, so the titles on the left are the same as what you saw on the previous slide, but we also want to say not all of those people are spending 100% of their time on the community center. So the first column is, well, the Parks and Recreation director, they're probably going to spend about 40% of their time on this. They're going to be spending the other 60% of their time on the other things that we're going to be doing. So we tried to take an estimate of the percentage of time, worked with Howard and Connie and Brian on some numbers in there. And so you can start to look at, we're talking about for all of Park Township, about $1 million a year for that. And then 1.2 with the operating expenses in there. So we wanted to make sure that number is in there because you can't build this amazing building and then not take good care of it and have the right people in there to make this thing really active and dynamic. So we took a holistic view on it. Again, something that we didn't start off doing, but we said, we need to come to you all with a realistic picture of what this whole thing looks like and not just a piece of it.
Capital cost wasn't enough, right? It's one to the point of building the building is great, right? But what's it going to cost to operate the building? How do we make the building operate or function? It's not about the building, it's about what we're doing with it. And so we wanted to make sure we had a good operational view of what's it going to take, what do those positions look like? And again, the team did a really nice job of reaching out to other resources and putting that together, and our own internal team did a very nice job of inputting that information as well.
And Randy Brown, who's not here, was really instrumental in helping us pull this together from an operations standpoint. I think we're going to go into funding, but before we do, any questions on these last couple of slides?
So let's talk about proposed funding approach. Will they pay for it, right? It's one thing for the township to say, hey, these are the things that we want. Will they pay for it? Because there is a cost associated with it. And so what we did was we tried to look at different quote unquote funding avenues where we could cover the capital cost and then what does the overall operational cost look like over time. And we added up quote unquote the different buckets that we have. Obviously we have an insurance bucket from the previous community center that was burned. We have a donation bucket. And we have, you'll notice we have percentages on there as to whether or not we think or how confident we are we could hit those buckets. But there is opportunity certainly in this community to go out and get quote unquote our donation base fired up about being able to leave gifts in and around this that will benefit the community. And we feel very good about that. There's opportunities certainly in the general fund, although the general fund's not meant for this kinds of stuff. I think ultimately, right, there might be a little bit that could come from the general fund, but I don't think it's an appropriate use to say that it all could come from the general fund, or even a major part of it could come from the general fund. The ultimate quote unquote bucket that's going to make something like this work, and this really comes back to will the township pay for it, would be a millage. And so we looked at the possibility of a millage. What does that look like? What does it look like in terms of how much of a millage? And then what kind of quote unquote dollars would that millage generate over a 10-year period, over a 20-year period? And obviously that's the major funding for something like this. There's things we can do certainly to lower the burden of the millage, but the millage is a necessary component of it. There is no question. I think speaking as a board member, the process was interesting for me because the township is very clearly voicing, I want something different. I want something that's active. I don't want to be part of a passive, you know what I mean, to have the community center be a passive thing in the community. I want it to be an active part of the community. And it's a great thing to ask for. I think ultimately a millage vote would determine whether or not, how strongly, if you will, they believe that to be the case. And that's really where we're at. I mean, all the good work that's been done over the course of the last 11 months, I think really articulated well what the community was asking for or is asking for. And there's a lot of energy around that. I very much do believe that. I think ultimately as a board, we're going to have to kind of get our head around, okay, then if this is what the community is asking for, what does that look like in the way of a millage? And how then would we pursue a millage in the coming year, I would suspect, to make something like this happen. A lot of different buckets that we can play around with, but in general, those are the buckets. Any questions around that?
And even when we put like insurance in there, we're hoping that it's more than that, but we actually said, let's just go on the low side of everything. So we didn't want to overestimate. So I think we've been on the low side.
Yeah, we're trying to play conservative as much as possible. Number 5 is grants. You know, there's kind of a mixed feeling around grants that, oh, maybe we could get a grant, maybe we couldn't. Holland's done a really nice job of getting grants for the things that they're doing. I have a hard time believing that we couldn't also do a good job in getting grants. But that being said, there's so many factors that play into whether you do or don't get a grant. And so I think from a confidence level point of view, putting, and that's the way why 5 is kind of shaded out, right? I can't speak to confidence around whether we would or would not. It's kind of like icing on the cake, right? Is it more icing or less icing? Yeah, what does that look like? Yeah.
It's not the main part.
Right.
Yeah. It's gonna be less than burden.
Right. It would lessen the, right. It could lessen the burden from a millage perspective or from a donate, whatever, right? So it could move. It's not a substantial move in the needle, but it's certainly one that we should pursue. We'd be negligent not to hard pursue that, right? Yeah. Yeah.
So we're going to just grab only a couple of slides left. So we actually started talking about design build, and I think you have probably heard the main message around that. It's something that we really want to do. I've actually delivered a number of projects with design build, and everything they've said, your real value comes in that partnership. Being an architect over all these years, what ends up happening, an architect designs something and then they send it over to bid it. And then literally everybody's pointing fingers at each other. Well, this is what we thought the number was. Well, the architect over designed here and now we're having to do this. There's a lot of finger pointing back and forth. This is truly a partnership between the owner and the architect and the contractor. That's where the real value comes. And I like what Dave said. So many times when you take that approach, you can actually get extra things in there. And there are incentives to get extra things in there at no additional cost. So they really work hard at doing that. You still bid your subcontractors and you still get the best price there. But this partnership up front is what is going to be critical to the success of this program. So we're excited to recommend that. This is our last slide. So what happens next? We want to get a response from you guys tonight because we do have, what you basically are seeing here is what we would share with the community back on September 16th. And then we want to get some comments back from them. Basically, as we know elections are up, right? And so we want to make sure that all of our new trustees or whoever is on the team, that we can bring them up to speed with this information. We're going to try to do it as we go along. But we basically said, let's just say through the end of the year, we want to get everybody aligned. We want to make sure that everybody feels good about the direction. And then basically in January, we would start to work on an RFP process. So we would go out to design build partners, would work with Howard on what that looks like. And so probably January's, we would send the RFPs out. Let's say February sometime, we would say, okay, here's who we're going to select to do the project. In March would be a final approval by all of you, the trustees. And then in the April timeframe, we would be able to award it and do a kickoff. So we could be starting as soon as next April or May. And then I know the millage work and all of that other stuff, it's something that we would start working on in January as well. So that's kind of what the next 6 months looks like with the package that we've presented. Any questions on timeline?
I've not gone through the state village and the process. It sounds like it's currently or
There's a lot we need to learn about the millage process. And I mean, we did not include that in our timeline. This is kind of a, if you will, almost best case scenario around the building timeline. I think that the building timeline becomes subject to the millage timeline. And I think that's the piece or the component that we would have to figure around and understand how that works.
And Howard has a perspective because we did talk about how they overlap.
Yeah. I mean, you certainly could start some of that process ahead of time in terms of looking at RFPs, in terms of design, architects, things of that nature. But you're gonna need to have that really pass before you pull the trigger on any real true contract. Yeah. Maybe you bring a team of people together and say, hey, we're gonna give you a few $1,000. That was a brilliant concept that Glenn had indicated. You bring a team together and you give them a small budget to say, pull your team together, architect, engineer, and bring a concept. You could theoretically do something like that. So before you sign a contract where you are engaging in construction, that military. So you're looking at this timeline is quick. I would tell you that I've never seen this level of contact prior to working with the architects and engineers. So while it's condensed time, that I think is quite doable because of how much work this team is putting. But yeah, if you were to stick with this timeline, then we would need a millage proposal in the loop. And then I would defer to Clerk Heater and to Deputy Clerk Jenkins as to what best election cycle that would be.
From my perspective, unless you want to pay for a special election, you're not going to be able to get a millage on the ballot until May.
What would a special election cost? About 30 grand.
But May's not a bad time frame. And the reality of it is May is not a bad time frame because to some degree it is, right? Because it's not as much as, we've spent a lot of time sharing this with you and going over this, and we've talked about it for the last few months. We would need to get a whole community on board with what this means for the community and understanding the cost ramifications of it as well as the benefit of it. And that's not going to be something that's going to happen in a 3-week period. That's going to take time. That's going to take effort. As far as starting the process prior to the millage, I'd be hesitant of that simply because what's the fiscal responsibility associated with that, right? Until we get the millage, is anybody really going to take us serious about the build process, knowing that there's a millage that could or could not potentially pass? I think ultimately we've got plenty of work to do. And if we decide to go forward with the millage, we have plenty of work to do between now and May. And I wouldn't want to muddy this in that process. That's just my perspective as a board member.
Brian, what, if I understand what you're saying, is that you wouldn't do any architectural or design capabilities until after the.
No, I think there's a level. I would defer to Jamie and this team. They know, they get it.
Yeah.
I mean, this is what they do.
But I think from a marketing standpoint, they almost need to have a pretty good definition of
We
what
have to be able
what it's
to,
gonna.
because people aren't
entail
going to
and what
read
it's
through
gonna look
no,
like.
you're right. People aren't going to read through 100 pages to try to get an idea. We have to figure out how to articulate that.
Yeah.
One of the things we had talked about, and we talked to Howard about it and Jamie as well. So up in this process, when we go out and look at design build contractors, basically you could just say, I'm making up a number, but you know what, we will pay you $15,000. And we're gonna pick the top three, and we may have 7 of them, we're top 3, we'll narrow them down to 3. And then you pick the top ones that you think you want to work with, you pay them a little bit of money, and they will actually start to put a conceptual plan. They'll start to put perspectives, they'll start to get a bigger picture. I think we need those marketing materials to go out and to begin to sell the community, to go get donations. So that's kind of, we would start preparing that package to get ready for that.
And that's what I was meaning by,
But it's-
there's an
Yeah.
element
Yeah.
that Len and his team have talked about that you could do like at the time, that.
Right. But that's specifically directed toward the marketing side of things, right?
Correct.
It's not,
Right.
Yeah. exactly.
And one of the things that you all will learn a little bit about is at the next month's meeting, you will see a resolution authorizing a debt issuance on potentially the purchase of the Coast Guard station. So it's a little different, it's a little similar at the same time. So you begin to go through that process of potentially issuing debt, working with bond counsel, working with financial advisor. I'm not saying it's a good thing, but that's gonna be a conversation that is gonna be opportunity very shortly. So you'll get an opportunity to some extent with those people.
I would like to, Walter's been very patient sitting through all this, so I would like for him just to come up now and just share the story from Evergreen Commons in terms of, you know, what their community center has done for the community, you know, what they're still in need of and how we could potentially partner. So thanks for being here, Walter.
Absolutely.
So hello, my name is Walter Catton. I'm the CFO and COO at Evergreen Commons. Evergreen is founded in 1985, so we're in our 39th year. Just give you a little background perspective. You know, for us, it's really about belonging, meaning, and purpose. And we like to say that we want to disrupt the way people age. So we know that we're working with a 55 and up community. We have approximately 5,200 members at Evergreen, and we see somewhere around 900 check-ins a day. So we have a lot of bodies in and out over the day. So we're open at 6 in the morning and we close at 6 at night. So heavy in the mornings, as you can imagine, with just the programming schedule. And for us, it's all about wellness. So wellness is mind, body, and spirit. So it's physical wellness, it's mental wellness, it's spiritual wellness, wellness as a general umbrella. We have, over 50 different social, recreation, and enrichment activities on any given monthly schedule. We have over 40 fitness programs running through the week as well, through the course of that week and month. We see 4,000 check-ins a month in our pool. Our pool is kept at a warmer temperature than the aquatic center. So we collaborate heavy with the aquatic center and with really all of our community partners to make sure that we are offering a similar service, but not a competing service, right? So for us, we have a saltwater pool that's a little bit warmer, so that lends itself to older adults and the nature of the skin, so they're not in a chlorine pool, but it also gives them an opportunity to work out with people who are doing the similar workouts and activities than they are, so they're not competing with a lap swimmer who might be in for a different workout at the aquatic center. We are actually in a very similar phase at Evergreen, going into our 40th year, taking a look at our master plan. So I commend the team and the activity that I'm hearing, because it's very similar to what we're going through. We've had 23 separate listening sessions as of our recent time. We developed a program, so aces on your program. It was awesome. It looked great. And that's really the, kind of the building blocks, right, that bring this together. So for us going through that, we've learned that this multi-purpose space and the ability to be flexible to see kind of what's coming is critical for us for the next 40 years. So the programming opportunities that we see within that 5,200 members is that we can't meet the demand. We are out of space. We're on a triangle. So Evergreen, if you're familiar with us, we're on State and Michigan, and we can't go anywhere but up. And and that's not really an option at our point right now. So for us, it's finding program opportunities that we can use to reach the aging older population. Right now, we see 1 in 6 of our residents are over 65. In the next 4 years, that will be 1 in 4. So we know that this demand is going to continue to increase. We know that healthy, active lifestyle contribute to longevity. So when we say that we want to disrupt the way people age, for us that is really to fulfill a life of activity until your dying breath. We want people to live long and die short. So from an older adult perspective is how do we enable that through our programs, through our offerings, and through our partnerships and collaborations within the community. So that's where we see an opportunity from looking at the space programming wise. How do we collaborate on those programming opportunities to find alignment in addressing the split between kind of, if we look at the north side and the south side of our membership, we're pretty much 50-50. So from the 5,200 members, we see that pretty much split between the kind of the north side and south side of Holland. And then the rest of that for us is made up around the periphery of the outlying communities. So we see people from Spring Lake, really Muskegon, Spring Lake, Grand Haven, all the way down past South Haven. And obviously that gets denser as we get closer to the epicenter for us at State Street. So I threw a lot of little pieces at you there. Len, anything that you want me to expand further on?
So I know a number that stuck in my head from the very beginning. So out of that daily attendance of, let's call it 850, like 18% of those people are from this side of town. So what happens if those people could really be using this facility as opposed to going to that facility? And as people age, you're not going to want to drive that far. So when we looked at our multi-purpose rooms, and after we talked with Walter, he said, you know what? If we could add a couple more multi-purpose rooms in, we really think that we could fill those rooms and you could leverage the programming that we do. You don't need to go start from scratch and start to build these programs. We already have them. And so we're looking at a partnership that we could do, with them to really start to bring some immediate activity and success to a building like this. So I think it's not starting from scratch. We have some good partners that we could work with to make this successful.
Right. We have a really good working base, obviously, of what we find is with certain classes, we go to 100 people, but then classes will come down to 15. So it depends on what need we're filling at that time. So for example, with our Parkinson's participants, it's a very specific and structured program. So on that, we're using evidence-based programming that has a certain cadence that it runs at. And, we see a consistent participation in that. So we know what the demand is, we know where the needs are, and we know how to structure those classes. And as Len said, we are continuing to see the demand come up. So right now, in the last 2.5 years, we added 1,900 members. So we anticipate we're going to continue to see about 800 to 900 new members join Evergreen. Very different structure in terms of we're a 501c3. So for us, it's based on our membership fees and some grants as well as donations and I'll say insurance partnerships for billing through Silver Sneakers and those like programs. But again, we know that the demand is here. We see the alignment. We think there's an opportunity to offer those programs to the residents and members on this site as well. Yeah, no, for sure. Any questions for me?
Excuse me. If I can kind of go back to some of your earlier slides and with his presentation, Holland Charter is currently in the process of building their activity center, and obviously you went and visited that based on the input that you provided. How is that going to impact what you're doing as well as, is there any duplication that we're currently doing with them? And if we've got 18% of your facilities, how much of a percentage of Charter Township do we possibly have that is going to Charter Township to their activity center? And how do we ensure that, to use kind of some of your terminology, we're not duplicating, we're not adding things that are already in existence in the community?
So we did do a lot of research around that, whether it was the aquatic center, what it's, Dave fortunately is very familiar with what's going on with Holland Charter Township. And so we used that information, some of that inside information, if you will, to make sure that we understood what it was that they were building, to make sure we weren't duplicating that. I think it's easy to say Holland Charter Township is more of an athletic focused facility, to a more athletic focused facility for Holland Charter Township. And I think that's why you saw more activity rooms, if you will, on our proposal, because that was kind of the loud and clear that we heard from, every different age group in Park Township was they want those rooms. They want that quiet spot. They want, those kinds of areas were very specifically requested and aren't duplicated in other facilities around us. And so that's what we tried to kind of balance out was, okay, just down the road is this, why are we different? Just over there is that, why are we different? What West Ottawa is going to be doing, why are we different? There was a lot of correlation back and forth between understanding that so that we could program's probably not the right word, so that we could facilitate in the best way.
So an example would be, we're not going to do a gym with weights, and we're not going to do showers, and we're not going to do all of that. So they're just a few minutes down the road. So why do we need to do that? So we intentionally left those things out. And I think really the multi-purpose rooms and the gymnasium, and that gymnasium is more than sports. Byron Center actually said they have events that come in there. They have arts and crafts fairs. They have all kinds of events, indoor pickleball courts. That gymnasium is used in so many different ways. So I think that gymnasium and the multi-purpose rooms are the things that we heard that everybody really, that's the common thing that we have to have for this to be successful.
Yeah.
We look at it as we play a giant game of Tetris with our rooms each week. So as we're looking at program demand and what offerings we have, each week we sit down and say, or I sit down with the team and say, okay, how are we going to get 3 courts of pickleball running, for this week? And, if we have a increase in our drumline classes. And I think that's the piece for us is building it around a community. It's building it around people it's not just come to take a class. There's something that draws them in. And I think that's that programming base and the community piece of it, for that, belonging, meaning, and purpose that we find as a differentiator. And I think that's where that collaboration can even be strengthened.
I was invited, I joined Brian and Len on a little tour when they toured Evergreen Commons, and a couple comments that have really stuck with me is that the percentage of older folks, and I'm now into my 60s, and I'm in that age group that will have some type of mental appreciation. Could you remind us of that? And I think it's indicative of our community in Park Township. We have aged. I don't have the data in front of me from our census data, but we have aged since the last census. And I think we just have to be very aware. We're multi-age. You did a great job in having all people talk into this, but yet we do have an aging population that really actually leans into what you offer. Could you just talk to that for a moment?
Sure. A couple of points there is that 1 in 6 going to 1 in 4 over 65. And I think from a community standpoint, we've done a tremendous job of investing in programs and amenities and infrastructure for younger adults. So when we look at the opportunity to say, what can we differentiate with older adults, that's built on really what are the leading things we see, right? Mental health is a huge piece that's taking more and more of an impact. We see obviously all the diagnosed diseases, so that can be any type of cognitive impairment. One thing I guess I didn't really highlight is Evergreen has two campuses. One is the State Street campus, which is our main campus, which you think about the programs and services we offer. But then on 16th Street, we also have our adult daycare facility that deals primarily with cognitive impairment. So that's where you're going to see your Alzheimer's, your Parkinson's, your any type of traumatic brain injury, any type of service where caregiver needs a respite and needs a break from their care partner so that they can take care of themselves. One of the leading causes of death, believe it or not, is not taking care of yourself, is taking care of your partner. And so we see more partners die, caregiver partners die than we do the participants. But the increase in mental health has been astronomical. We are working hand in hand with a number of grants that are recognizing that, one, the older population doesn't easily step into a mental health discussion. So it's kind of a different generation. So bringing that more to the forefront has taken a lot of effort and time and programming that are specific to that without saying you're joining a mental health program. Mental health has to be woven through our programs so that it becomes something that's a natural step or segue for the individuals who are part of the program. I don't know if I answered your question. See if I gave a lot of.
One and 8.
Is 1 and 6. 1 and 6. We'll see. Yes. Yep. Right. Right. Yeah. Right.
I'm not saying it's there.
Right. Yeah.
Any other questions for?
Yeah, I have his comment about having 900 check-ins on the day. Have you done any projections as to what we think this facility might have in terms of daily participation?
It's a good question, right? Because this facility definitely has a capacity. And part of what you're seeing is phase one of potential expansion. We hit on that just a little bit around the way that this is being thought about is a phase one approach, and then see, build it, they'll come kind of a mentality. What does that turn into? And if we can add off of two different sides of what's being proposed, it gives us opportunity then to, do we add another gym? Do we add more multi-use rooms? What makes sense in the future, not wanting to get ourselves into a situation where we're not just building for today. We truly do want to build for tomorrow and for a situation that we don't understand and we can't foresee.
So,
yeah, I think from a marketing standpoint, if I may, those kind of figures about what the capacity might be and what we see for daily use will probably be information that the public's going to want to see and have an input to.
A part of the information that we do have, when we went out and looked at these facilities, we actually wondered how many people do you have coming in every day? What is the membership like? And then how many multi-purpose rooms do you have? So we sized our facility based upon what we learned from the other facilities. And so we haven't estimated like how many, probably Byron Center is the closest to what our model, what we think we would be and how many participants we could bring in. So we have a pretty good idea, based upon that. But I think we also have to add additional capacity because they have all said we've underbuilt. We actually need more than what we have projected. I'm not sure how we would get at that number, Terry. I mean, we can do a ratio. We have so many residents per age category. There has to be a parallel comparison, and we could do that. But it's going to take a little bit of work to try to do that. We can take what we have, but we would have to do a little bit more work on it. But I feel very confident with the numbers that we have. So
It's a reasonable starting point based on what we've researched.
Any other questions for Walter? Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
I do want to mention one more thing because we have Ken back here. And so literally these are people that have expressed an interest in our facility and what we do. And we said, we don't want to duplicate what others are doing. Well, Ken is right across the street, right? And so as they actually came and did the hospitality in our first session, and as we talked to Lynn, she said, oh my gosh. A part of the dynamic, when you walk in Evergreen Commons, it's that reception area, it's the food, it's the coffee, it's all that stuff. It's not just a push pod over here. And Lynn said it would be awesome to have a Ken 2 over here because they're out of capacity. Over there is a smaller place. And so, you know, what would happen if you had an organization like Ken that does amazing things? They could actually expand some of their food offerings and lunches and things like that. So they have expressed an interest. We would love to talk to you about what that could look like. I don't know if you want to say anything, Lynn. You didn't know I said let's do this, right?
No, I didn't.
I know you did, but I think it's this partnership concept that you have that really starts to bring this thing to life, and people that say, no, it would be valuable to them and to us in our facility.
Yeah, I just think that, you know, when we bought the building first, we said we want to build a business that involves the community. We want to create a community. We didn't know what would do that, a retail store, probably not, right? So we landed on coffee, and it certainly was clear immediately in the community that people were longing for that place to gather. Sadly, our place is small and our parking lot's really small, but so I feel like, you know, build it, they will come. I don't know, marketing will be huge, but we have seen where people just want places to gather, you know, and work too. We have that battle, you know, people working there, you know, but we love to have that. We just don't have a ton of space. We just don't, you know, like for all day working, but I do think that the community is longing for a place. And I think educating them will be so important to see what that looks like.
From what you guys have put out tonight, this is very exciting. It is going to, the community is gonna respond, and this, the amount of traffic here is gonna, you know, it's gonna be astronomical. How do you safely get 1,000 people here a day? That's my question. How do you get walkers through woods here? Because a lot of people are gonna wanna walk.
Yeah.
How do you get them from the south side to the north side?
Lots to talk about, yeah. Don't mean to cut you off, but so many questions around this.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to show you a little bit of the spirit of support we have from the community and ideas of how we could partner together. So I just wanted to do that part.
Yeah.
Over to you to close that.
One more final thing. The presentation you saw tonight was maybe 20 pages. I guarantee that there are 500 to 1,000 supporting pages behind this thing. Hats off to Jamie, because not only did Jamie spent an incredible amount of hours putting this together and also used the resources of her company to do it. Dave Ash used the resources of his company to do that, which cost us nothing, and yet the benefit was unbelievable for us. Jerry spent time on his vacation investigating places and getting notes back to us that helped us shape what this thing is. I can't say it enough, the amount of effort that this team put into making this happen and getting this kind of data together for us to go over and talk about and mull over. We want your input. We want your insight around this thing, because just as we've gained insight from everybody we've talked to, we really appreciate and want your insight into how each one of you think about this, and that the people that you talk with, how they potentially could think about this. It is a fundamental shift. I've talked about this a little bit, but it is a huge shift from where the township is taking a turn and a direction. And I hope as a board, we're open enough to see what's being requested of us, and that we can put the work in place to then articulate it back and say, okay, we hear you, we see you, help us to make it happen in the form of a millage to support it, right? I think Connie and her team have done a phenomenal job in this township of being fiscally responsible, and that we take care of what we build. And this is no different, right? If we're going to build this thing, We have to facilitate it. We've got to take care of it, and we have to quote unquote remove the roadblocks around it. Long story short, thank you for your time. We appreciate your support through this entire process. The extra dollars that we were able to get to make it happen, the time that you've supported us in that, we're exceedingly grateful. Thank you.
The one thing I would. We are ready to push the send button tomorrow morning based upon what you say tonight, but literally there's a communication that's ready to go out to all the residents and people that have participated to come in on September 16th. So we want to announce it. We would show them what we just shared with you. If you looked at something and said, I don't know that we should share, if there's anything you want to shift or change a little bit, we kind of need to know that. But if you guys give us the approval to invite the community in to share this on September 16th, we're prepared to do it. We'll send tomorrow. So what do you guys think? Are we ready to send?
Let me just make some comments. One, yeah, I mean, Howard said it, Steve said it, some others have thought it, and just the thoroughness of this is just impressive. So I can't believe it's been a year that you got this, and but thank you for the time and the effort. Unbelievable, not only for the board, invaluable for the board, and for the township. So thank you, appreciate it. Because when I read through this, okay, it's all good, it's great. But then when you guys started talking about it, you could just kind of feel the energy that you guys had behind it, and I'm imagining that as you continue to work at it, there was just more and more energy behind it. So, was it you that went on your vacation to look at some stuff?
Yeah, you know, and it's really cool, and everybody on the team benchmarked other places. I think all of us went to 2 or 3. But you go to these community centers. My son lives in St. Paul. We went with him. We have a 4-year-old grandson, and we all went. The employees of that center, we went to actually 2 of them. We're so proud of that place, and it was so cool. And everyone had kind of a special piece. This particular one had a library, had an activity arts room, had a gymnasium, and multi-purpose rooms, and outside had a big play area, soccer field. Really super well done. The community they have an amazing sign up online, but it's a special place, and they're proud of it. And it was multicultural, multiracial, multi-community, old, young, everybody was there. And I think that's what we're talking about. The vision that Brian and Brian laid out for us is really cool.
Yeah, nice. I didn't fully understand the input that you got from just reading through it, so it's good to hear that from my standpoint, because it tells me, okay, the community, you know, when I looked at the cost, I thought, oh, that's a big cost, and I thought, I don't know that the township would vote for that, but after hearing the input that you got, then I think there's a good chance they would vote. I really appreciate including the Monument Center, because
It's important. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's important too, right?
Do you have any details or just an overall of what you'd like to see at the Mottman Center that may pull some of the Southsiders in? Also, if we would kind of list the improvements you foresee there?
I think we certainly can articulate that. I think it goes back to meeting space, right? And being able to provide areas to gather. And maybe it's an extension where on certain days you've got, I mean, it's not a huge center, obviously, but that doesn't mean that you couldn't pour into it on special days, a coffee day or a soup day or whatever. And I think that's the big thing, right? Was what we heard was, what about us? And it's like, holy cow, they're right. What about us? And I think more importantly, that the staff, when we talk about staff and operational staff, quote unquote, that would be here, how does that staff then reach over? And I think that's where we're missing it today. We don't have the staff, right? There's no one that quote unquote owns that center today. No one's quote unquote responsible for it. It's there and it can do things, but there's no one who quote unquote owns it. And we really want that ownership. We want the ownership in the operational staff to just what Jerry said, right? They're proud of that, right? They see the impact it's having on the community and the people that attend and use it. So it would be hard for me to articulate what it means. I know there's opportunity there. And I know that it can have an impact.
But
on that
maybe
site.
just elaborate a little bit more.
I think so.
Yeah,
We can do
and
that.
for sure, on the marketing side of things,
Yeah,
absolutely.
exciting.
And then I think the programs, Jan, would be the other piece. So not only the space, but we would have expanded programs and it would be in an even more active place than what it is and more utilized than what it is today. So just make it more active.
And then lastly, I would just say, we cannot vote on anything because we don't vote at a work session, but I think we can get a general consensus. I think it would be most helpful to hear from the community on the 16th, so let's say whatever button you put, I push the button. Because I'd really like to hear on the 16th what they think about the village.
Yeah.
I think that would be really helpful for the board and see what the community thinks. I think they'll be excited about the community center without a doubt. We just want them to be excited about, okay, here's a good reason to vote for the village.
Right. Okay.
Great.
Yeah, you'll have a huge marketing challenge.
No question.
Yeah.
Got a proven need. Yeah. So.
16th is a
Anyone else have any
Monday.
comments from the board? All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
We'll move to our public comment here. Anyone on this side want to comment? Anyone on
I just wanted to say that that's great presentation and you guys have definitely done a lot of work. I had a random idea about the fundraising, which was, it'd be kind of cool if we could like sell bricks from the old community center to build a new one.
anyone on this side? All right, great. All right, we're gonna close the comment. Just gonna throw out for comments.
Awesome job. I am overwhelmed and I'm so impressed.
So moved. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. I appreciate it.